Now we'll be moving forward with the next session, as we promised that these 2 days will be full of knowledge sharing and learning. We'll take the conference forward with the next panel discussion. The topic is the legal department of the future, digitalization, digital transformation, and disruption. Please join me in welcoming our session moderator, Ms. Lekhna Menon, Global Negotiation Counsel, Treasury and Trade Solutions at Citibank. Please give her a big hand. Our second panelist for the session will be Ms. Gaythri Raman, Managing Director at LexisNexis, Southeast Asia. Our third panelist is Mr. Frederick, Senior Legal Counsel at GSK. And last but not the least, Ms. Snigdha Nahar, General Counsel and Compliance Officer at BECIS, Commercial Industrial Solutions. Please give them a big hand, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, good morning, everybody. So today, the four of us are here to talk about the legal department of the future. Digitalization, digital transformation, and disruption. So before we start, we'll just all take a couple of seconds to introduce ourselves. I'll start. My name is Lekhna. I introduced myself earlier. I'm the Global Negotiation Counsel at Citibank. I deal mostly with contracts, contracting, clients, deal shaping, product, legal advisory, stuff like that. And I cover all regions for Citibank. Gaythri?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Like I introduced myself earlier, I am the Managing Director for the LexisNexis business in Southeast Asia. So my remit is across the 10 ASEAN countries. The majority of my employees are in Malaysia and Singapore. We have offices in both countries. And in this part of the world, we are a 90-year-old organization, quite an institution. So just imagine the evolution and the transformation that is needed from a 90-year-old company, both internally, with mindset, employees, processes, as well as adhering to the needs of our customers who are also evolving in this market as well. So in the last 5 years, I've been driving transformation both internally and externally with using technology with my employees and the processes, as well as launching artificial intelligence-powered products to the markets as well. Thank you.
Cool. Frederick?
Yeah, hi. So as introduced earlier, so it's Frederick here, Senior Counsel for GlaxoSmithKline Healthcare. So you might be wondering, what is a pharma company lawyer sitting on the stage in front of you, sharing with you his experiences? So apart from my day job, when I cover the regions of Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, as well as the Global Marketing Pharma Organization, Marketing Hub, I also co-lead the Global Pharma Legal Digital Roundtable, which is a forum for lawyers to come forward to share their digital projects or seek consultation from the core members of the roundtable. And on top of that, I'm also part of the Committee of Practice for Digital and Privacy, which is tasked with upskilling the lawyers internally in relation to the digital and privacy matters. So with sort of this background, I hope to be able to share my learning experiences with the team here. Of course, this is very much an open forum, right? It's not just very much a one-way discussion from us to you. Happy to hear, your own experiences, either later in the Q&A session or later when we have a breakout, during the break time. Happy to hear and share your experiences as well and make it as fruitful for you as it is for us sharing our experiences. Thanks.
Hi everyone. I introduced myself as well very briefly earlier. I'm Snigdha. I am a General Counsel and Compliance Officer for BECIS. We're a B2B renewable energy and heat sales business where we sell directly to consumer rather than going through the utility. So I cover all of our countries, which include obviously the headquarters in Singapore, and then 8 markets across Southeast Asia, India, and China. I also manage a team of about 4 or 5 lawyers, corporate secretaries, and compliance professionals. And essentially, my background is more in after private practice. My background more in smaller organizations. So I worked in a private equity fund before this, which is, as you know, pretty lean. And then after that, in this company, which is essentially a startup, it started in about 2018, and it's a joint venture between Siemens and a few DFIs and a private equity fund. So I think my perspective has been basically the journey from nothing to where we've gotten the organization to in terms of digitalization and ensuring we have a legal function which can move in tune with the business. So where my perspective is going to come from during this panel discussion is more, how do you start from scratch? How do you convince a business or a lean fund that digitalization and investing in legal operations is for their benefit? So I look forward to that discussion, Zal.
Cool. So before we begin this session, just a general disclaimer, all of the opinions that are being expressed in this panel are our own and does not represent the organizations that we're representing. And the session is intended to be pretty interactive, so feel free to contribute even as we're going through our responses. You don't have to wait till the Q&A at the end. And in addition to asking questions, please feel free to share your own experiences, because let's face it, in this room we've got maximum human capital when it comes to knowledge about digitalization and digital transformation. We've all got our experiences. So you can tap into more than just the four of us when you want to, leverage off everyone's experiences. So we're going to start the discussion with what is the legal department of the future and what does that mean to us. So we'll head off with Frederick, who will talk to us about his thoughts on this.
Yeah, so like what Lekhna mentioned, actually across the room, I'm quite sure we are across various spectrums in terms of our digitization and digital transformation journey, right? Each company, each legal department will at a different phase. Based on my interactions and observations with the various legal counsels in various conferences, I could almost draw a very sort of a brief, informal type of spectrum, I would call it, right? A spectrum of different levels of capability and where we stand in terms of that journey. So for starters, in one end of the extreme polar, we have what we call the non-believers. So those who still believe in paper, still believe in not using technology at all. I guess in this room, hardly any. If there's any non-believers still right here, maybe we should really have a conversation outside this forum. Apart from non-believers, the next phase would be what I call the non-users. So these are potentially people who believe in technology, the value in technology, but have not had a chance to experience it. And then following from there, we have what we call the early adopters of technology or new technology, followed by what I would call the experimenters, and finally the innovators. Okay? What I want you all to do as a favor, right, across the whole conversations in this session, as each of the panelists comes up and talk about their own experiences, think about where each of us stand in relation to this spectrum, and also think about where you stand in this whole spectrum. So I would like to start off with, I think from a GSK perspective, in terms of our legal operations and digital transformation, we are very much early adopters of technology. I wouldn't say we are innovators yet, and you could almost see it when you hear some of the other panelists describe their own experience. So when we talk about early adopters of technology, where we are is because we have been already exploring using technology to run certain projects, automate certain functions, and also delivering the services to the external stakeholders as well. So I will not delve too much in detail, because I will take the opportunity to discuss a bit more later at my personal experiences before. So maybe let me hand it off to the other panelists first to describe their own brief and expectation of the legal department.
Sure. Gaythri, let's hear your thoughts.
Okay, so I am looking at this from a perspective of how the world is evolving and how our business and our organization is adapting to this evolution. And then it comes to the legal department, right? It's because I'm not managing a legal department. I come from the business perspective. Companies are globalizing, and we've been talking about globalization for a decade now, right? But we are seriously in it already. And on top of that, there's this blurring of lines between borders already. And there is a tension between the nationalistic and the globalization. There's the nationalistic, which Philip earlier described, which is the regulators talking about national laws and regulations, but then there is this global set of laws, rules, policies, ethical considerations that the companies need to adhere to. Companies are now accountable for more than just profit, loss, revenue growth, CAGR. It's not like that anymore. Companies are held accountable and commit to ESG goals. They commit to the UN sustainable goals. They commit to producing quality material in a sustainable manner. They commit to not polluting the environment. They commit to laws, not just local labor laws in a specific country, which is easier, but a standardized set of labor laws that is ethical as well. Then comes the legal department. You have to support that. You have to support something that is so hard for the business to do. It is so hard to consolidate everything. Just imagine Philip gave an example of just consolidating the legal department. Just imagine an entire organization. LexisNexis is in 130 countries. So we have to consolidate all of this as well. And just picture how valuable the general counsel and the legal advisor would be to the business if you are at the table informing on strategic initiatives and decision making in the beginning. So I see the future of the legal department where the legal department are enablers, profit and growth drivers, and not cost centers. And in order to do that, the legal department needs to be in sync with the company. As your organization, as an MNC, as they are growing, look at your CEO's organizational structure. And to Frederick's question, look at where you are. Are you far away from that structure, your own team? Are you still looking at manually, filing things? Or are you halfway there to meet the expectations of the business already? That's where I expect the legal department will be. And then you can think about the tools that you need, the skill set, the kind of employees you want to hire in your team as well. Thanks.
Very well put. Snigdha, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. So I think I am kind of building on what Gaythri said as well. What is the legal department? What is your function? We're a department like any other department, right? Operations, marketing, finance. Why is it that we are seen as a cost center? Like it actually, my first in-house job, we weren't seen as a cost center because I was in a private equity fund. So in a way, maybe my context is also driven from that because we sat with the investment team. If there was any transaction, any M&A, any debt financing, some of the times the lawyer in question was actually driving the transaction while the investment person was doing more of the modeling, etc. So just taking that more in the context of a company and larger entities, a lawyer, whether it's a sole lawyer in a smaller organization or in a particular subdivision of an MNC, or it's a big department of lawyers doing very specialized things, there is no reason to be a silo. And I think that comes from the mindset of the lawyers. So that would be my first pillar for a legal department. Who is, even if you're coming straight from a law firm where, yes, you are seen as an external service provider, there is a mindset change. And that's one of the first things I tell whoever I hire who's coming straight from a law firm. You're not in a law firm anymore. You can't give advice and then step back. You're going to be implementing. You're not a consultant anymore. So I think that mindshift change, despite all of the technology and all of the digitalization, maybe that is the disruption element we are looking for. You're truly just an employee. You're looking to move the business forward. Then the second thing that I would look for is not so much automation, but efficient use of technology depending on what your budget is and depending on what the goals of the business are. Some organizations for example, when they do M&A, they need a very sophisticated data room set up. Like they will need an Ansarada, they'll need something that LexisNexis offers. So, but some organizations cannot afford it. But you still need to have an efficient cloud-based system to store your data when you're going for any kind of due diligence exercise. So you need to ensure that privacy elements are taken care of. You need to ensure that whenever there's an update to the data, the other side gets notifications. So irrespective of what your budget is, the legal department should ensure that they are commensurate with that, rather than getting something which we cannot afford, or which is just too high tech for the people involved and they won't be able to manage it. And then the third element that I would think about is use of external service providers. Because they are an expensive resource, right? And it depends again on the size of the legal department. There could be really large legal departments which only go out to get external service providers for very specialized matters like arbitration, litigation, IP registrations. And then there are the companies that I am more familiar with, where we just don't have the capacity to do large things and to draft all the documents. So for us, spend management, billing, and a legal panel and of law firms who understand our needs becomes super important. So I would say these are the three main pillars that come to mind as an important factor for a legal department of the future.
Cool. So there you have it. That's your legal department of the future. To be honest, I've not come from private practice. I very early on in my career decided that I wanted to do in-house work. So I would say my career is born and bred in the legal department of a corporation. And I can tell you that legal departments, for the most part, are often overlooked as like they said, a cost center, a corporate function. They're not core business, right? That's always the argument for lower bonuses and lower pay range. And we're business critical, but we're not core business. So how do you transform or make a case for commercializing a legal department in an organization? And your answer is by delivering value, right? In any, 10 years ago, a legal department was the rubber stamp you needed on all your corporate efforts. It was the last person you go to say, okay, and then move on. Or if you're facing a litigation scenario, call my lawyers, I need my lawyers in this meeting. Otherwise, you wouldn't even want to touch a lawyer with a 10-foot pole, especially in an in-house scenario. So I think over the last decade or so, a lot of lawyers in this room and outside has spent their careers moving away from being that lawyer, right? You don't want to be the cock blocker. You don't want to be the one that doesn't know what you're talking about, that talks legalese and doesn't adapt to business products and scenarios. The one that is so adversarial in a negotiation that the client just moves on to a different service provider. And so looking at where the legal department has come, as Mekhla very rightly pointed out, we're business partners at this point. We're as critical as HR or accounting and finance. Without your legal department, most corporations fall, because you need a legal person in HR, you need a legal person in finance, you need a legal person who's reports to the CEO, you need a legal person with your sales team who manages your contracts, your processes, your framework, who sets up the approval matrices, all of that. And I think that over time, lawyers have demonstrated the value that you bring to the table in a corporation. So going from there, where digitalization comes in to kind of take us to the next level, I think in recent years, legal ops has become as central to a legal department as actual lawyers. You've got, people who come up with contract management systems. You've got LexisNexis with all their legal references. you need more and more of these tools to make legal function more efficient. One of the biggest investments you see the top 100 Forbes companies doing is investing in legal operations. And I guess that's where your digital transformation journeys stem from. I've been back in Accenture. I was primarily a contracting lawyer, but Accenture was one of those organizations that innovate as you go, and on his spectrum, they would fall under the innovators, right? So they come up with products and solutions, right, internally first, and if it works internally, we market it to our clients. And one of those systems was a contracting software that helps you, one, review contracts, sell it to people, send it across the organization for approval, so it automatically tracks all of that. And on top of that, they've got a whole library of clauses. So anytime you want to review something, you want to check what the policy is in the company, whatever it is, it's all built into a knowledge library that's tied into the same software. And when you build such software, it's real lawyers that you call in to come and test it, provide feedback, how to fine-tune it, and you create a solution that works for lawyers. 5 years ago, if you have techs that come up with softwares that work and they're brilliant tech solutions, but lawyers just can't use it, right? So as you go along, what you will see in the industry is you have lawyers creating tech and pioneering these journeys for lawyers in the company to work more efficiently. So in the future, following the current trends, what I foresee is the legal department of the future being as critical as your core business functions, right? A legal department that performs as efficiently and one that is heavily invested in terms of tech and ops, right? To the same extent as all your other core functions in your business. That to me is the legal department of the future. Again, feel free. If anyone has other thoughts on what the legal department of the future should look like the mic is right there. If not, we'll move on to the second part of the panel today, which is to talk about what are organizations doing right when it comes to, working towards that future state of your legal department, and what can they do better in the coming years to work towards that end state that we're looking at for the legal department of the future. And we're going to start with Gaythri and her experience with AI.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a real story. This is what happened in my organization. Like I said, we're a 90-year-old institution. We started law reporting in 1932. We celebrated our 90th anniversary this year. And I've been with the company 20 years. So 5 years ago, I assumed the managing director role here in Southeast Asia. And we knew by that time that LexisNexis in the US was already a legal tech leader. There was a lot of exciting things happening. There were a lot of acquisitions happening as well. And we started building business cases to create products for the Malaysia and Singapore market using AI. We were assigned with our technology partner, so internal AI engineers based in Shanghai. And our product team was supposed to work with these brilliant engineers to create products, right? So that's one component, that's external. But internally, we were a 90-year-old company. So I still had editors who would print cases out and underline them and highlight them in red and yellow, etc., because that's the best way, that's the only way to identify mistakes and edit out spelling errors and things like that. So I still had editors who were like that. I mean, knowledge-wise, fantastic. But productivity-wise, how many cases can you do in that span of time, right? And I needed to prepare my content, which is millions of cases, for the AI. AI doesn't just magically appear. We can't just code it, right? My content has to be AI ready. So there was a disconnect here. And we had to go through this journey. So we went from this scenario where our editors were printing out case law and judgments and then using a pen, and then after that scribing it back into Word document, to running transformation training, messaging, marketing, PR essentially within the company that says technology is not going to take your job away. I'm not going to fire you and hire a robot. It doesn't work that way. But you need to upskill. And so we ran automation certification training for our lawyers and for our editors. And they identified menial, repetitive tasks that they did not like to do within their jobs and programmed a bot to do it. So now, instead of printing it out, there was a bot that, a virtual bot that they would create and program to do all this, to correct all the spelling errors and identify spelling errors. That cut off so much of their time already, right? So now my bot is doing things internally. So then, again, at the same time, we needed to get ourselves AI ready. The AI ready part is a whole different issue. It's not a bot correcting spelling errors. It is the AI identifying the ratio decidendi in a judgment. How do you get the AI to that level? You need lawyers to work and test and tell the AI and tell the engineers, your AI didn't get it right this time. Your accuracy is only 30%. Test it again, challenge it again. Your AI this time is at 70%. I want it to be 90%. And I'm telling you the real scenarios because my primary law editor would say, I want it to be 90%. My Shanghai programmers would come to me and say, your editors are too demanding. You know, 90% is just unrealistic. Can we just agree on 70%? We're at 70% now. I want to pass it, right? And then I had to mediate and get all of them together and sit and say, what would make sense? And you need a certain type of lawyer to be able to say, I'm not scared of you, dear AI. I'm not scared of you, technology. I know best, and I'm going to tell you what to do. And in order to do that, you need that kind of mindset. And it's a journey. You have to prepare them from that to a disbeliever to this level where, no, I want it to be 90%. How can I get there? And so that is what is required. And then we had to work with my team. We got to 92%, by the way. And then eventually when we launched, it was 95% accuracy. It's better than a human being, to be honest. And the bot works 24/7, right? And the AI works 24/7 and learns from itself. But most importantly, my employees were not scared. They didn't think that they would be threatened by technology. They didn't do any of that. They all became certified programmers and know enough to challenge the super duper brilliant programmers in Shanghai as well. And we managed to launch it. Today, there's no paper on in any part of the office, none at all. Nobody prints anything. And that made it so easy for us to evolve to work from home completely and not even have an hour or a minute of disruption during that time because everything was already in the cloud, everything was standardized, streamlined, nothing was in paper at all, and we could just operate like normal when we had the lockdown as well. This is a real scenario, so it really took a while for us to get there, 5 years, 4 years to be exact, but we are now happily in business as usual mode, unfazed as well. Who knows what the next 2-3 years is going to bring as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Gaythri. Frederick, why don't you share your digital transformation journey and where legal departments are now and what they can do to do better?
Sure, a lot of what Gaythri mentioned actually we could almost relate. But I think what I'm most envious about the both of you, Essential and both LexisNexis, is that you all start off as a very technology-heavy company. As opposed to us healthcare company, I think we are still trying to run the race. We are not there yet. Therefore, a lot of these things that they have, unfortunately, we don't have. So, like what Gaythri mentioned, I'd like to share 3 points through my own personal experiences whilst running through in GSK. So the first personal experience was something quite similar to what Gaythri mentioned. We also tried to create a bot to answer standard questions, to try to remove mundane workload, and support the stakeholders. And then also, we also try to create a signatory tool, that sort of automate the request for signatories for the bot to sign off without us having to chase them all the time. Guess what? we didn't succeed. It's not because we don't have the technology to do it, but because we start off on the wrong footing. I think what you need to understand is that before you engage on your technology journey, you need to first recognize the value of technology. What the value of technology is to your company. And when I say recognize the value of technology, it means what are you trying to achieve using technology? There's a question that came out to me back in 2019, was speaking to an audience like this in a conference, and one of the audience participants actually asked me this question: how do you achieve, digital transformation? My question back to her is, what exactly is the value of technology to you? What are you trying to achieve with using technology? A lot of people use technology for the sake of using technology. They use technology because they're chasing something. They're chasing because their other competitors are using it. But that's not how we should need to function. We need to recognize that the value of technology is what issues you need to address. So after recognizing the value of technology, next is identifying that value to you. Okay, going back to my example, so we were trying to be savvy because the other functions were also doing it. I have my HR doing something like a chatbot. I have my procurement team doing chatbot. We can't lose as a legal team. So we wanted our chatbot. Wrong. That value is wrong. So we actually need to identify what exactly we want to achieve. So like what Gaythri mentioned and the team, the rest of the panelists mentioned as well, most often than not, when we look at the function of legal, we are moving away from a cost center to a business partner, right? And this is not something new. What is new is how we bring ourselves from that to this journey. So there are a few ways to go around it, and technology can help to achieve this. First and foremost, if you look at it, maybe it removes the mundane staff activity. So your lawyers can focus on more value-added strategic delivery to your clients. So they're not wasting time looking at contracts. They're not wasting time giving responses which are the same all over again to different clients. That could be achieved with technology, whilst you focus on the more strategic thinking and value, right? The other way of looking at it is, if you have already reached that threshold, right, you have already removed the mundane work, then how do you create value in using technology? Okay, that's the other thing you need to think about. So I think that's my experience. So the second experience, so identifying, recognizing value of technology. The second example, personal experience I wanted to share. So in 2016, 2017, our organization went on a foray to look at a data management tool. Okay, I shall not name the name because it was, again, not a success. So, but what I want to share is this. So we started off with the data management tool. The organization top-down requires all lawyers to use it. The lawyers find it so difficult to use it because it was not interface friendly. So a lot of lawyers actually choose not to use it. They just relent back to the old ways of working. But did we stop from there? Did we just say that, oh, because the first two didn't work, we stopped there? No. We actually went on to accept the fact that it was a failure. The technology tool wasn't working. We went on to another vendor. So that is another value I wanted to share. In your digital journey, there will always be failure, right? But don't stop there. You actually need to have the courage to go and continue to explore the use. Because once you identify the value and recognize the value, you need to know that technology does work. But sometimes not having the right tool, the right handshake, the right vendor, right? Again, LexisNexis can play a part. So I think that is a very key thing in the second message I want to pass along, right? Identifying, also understanding that you shouldn't stop at just a failure of technology. Okay? And then the last one I want to share is, again, very closely aligned to what Gaythri mentioned. In fact, it's what we call a Jevons paradox. What it actually means is that most often than not, when we think that technology can take away work, it actually create new work for us lawyers. So take me for example. So I have been working very much as a generalist lawyer, doing supporting the local businesses in general legal advice. But over time, as I mentioned in my introduction, I started to look at upskilling the lawyers from a digital and data privacy standpoint, right? When we look at leading a round table for discussions, this was never the initial work that I was signed up for, but it evolved, right? Of course, not to the extent that what Gaythri mentioned, that everybody, all the counsels become suddenly coding experts and everything, but there is still value. So helping the organization identify the fact that having technology does not take away the job. It actually increases new opportunities, introduces new opportunities to the lawyer. So over time, they start to appreciate that. So that's another value that the organization needs to embed within the organization to make sure that digital transformation will be a success from the start. Right? So to sum up, right, the three values: identifying, recognizing value of technology, knowing where the fact that understanding that technology does not displace you, but actually creates new opportunities for you. And then finally, also understanding that having technology, failing at technology does not mean failure eventually, right? Try to have the positive mindset to continue to push it through. Yeah.
Thanks, Frederick. Snigdha, let's have your 2 cents.
Sure. I think the thing that I want to start from is the failure aspect, because that's definitely an important one to keep in mind when you're starting off anything new. I'll also give two examples, one of a failure and one of a success when I was trying to get our startup into a more digital friendly situation. I wouldn't even say digital transformation. I think that's too large a word for what we are trying to do, but just getting like basics done. So the first thing that I actually started off doing, and that was probably too large and too ambitious, was start to look at a contract management software and a platform. So but I was absolutely certain that the kind of company that we are, like firstly, like I used to be in a private equity fund. We didn't have too many repetitive contracts. Every deal was different. Everything required a lot of external lawyer support. But then when I moved to the company, I realized we have a lot of repetitive contracts, and across different jurisdictions, there was a lot of repetition, like NDAs, which is, of course, one of the first things that we as lawyers do not like spending our time on. And even the junior lawyers are like, okay, after 10 NDAs, everything looks the same. So NDAs, MOUs, we use MOUs across various parts of the business, term sheets for vendors, term sheets for customers. So a lot of this was, in my mind, just in separate pockets and separate parts that could be brought together. So I started demoing a few different contract management platforms. Again, I will not name them, but I did demo and spoke extensively to 3 of them. And then I liked one quite a bit, and then we did like a demo across a couple of business divisions across 2 countries. And then I remember very distinctly, we had like a training for 1 hour for just all the lawyers, and then a few of the business people who I thought would be more receptive. And the number of questions that we got, they were so basic and so kind of showing not the age of the people, because everyone was young, like most of the people were in their 20s, 30s, but just how much of a dinosaur they are, or we are, when we talk about where how we use technology. Even basic things like just storing your documents on OneDrive or SharePoint, because we use Microsoft. A lot of them didn't even do that. So there were questions like, oh, is this software going to be able to pull a computer on my documents saved on my hard disk in my computer, or do I have to now upload it to the cloud? So even during that training, I realized this is not a good idea. We're just not there. Like the mindset is not there. Even for my lawyers, even though I tell them like literally every week that you need to have everything on SharePoint, it's still not there. So I kind of half-heartedly pushed the demo along, but I pretty much shelved it after that. So that was a failure I learned from, that really this company is still growing and trying to get its business and its customers at a certain level. So we really cannot be looking at these kinds of imperatives, which is if a large company like GSK would fail at that, then there's no way that a company like ours is ready for it. But the thing that actually did succeed, and which a lot of even our board members recognized that we didn't have, was e-signatures. So we used to do either physical signatures, or we used to do, the typical people would just affix their signature, or their secretary would just affix their signature on a document. And that was creating a lot of risk. Like you can just copy paste, you can snip tool any signature and put it into any document. And we had instances like that. We had board members completely forgetting that they had to sign documents, and then asking us if they were even sent those documents. So that was something I realized, that we are actually ready and we need it. So even though that should be IT, but I realized that the legal team will need to drive it. So went through a couple of vendors there, pricing, etc., and then managed to get that rolled out with having a pilot in one country and then rolling it out across all of the organization. We still have teething troubles. I actually only rolled it out earlier this year. still have people who don't have the software, and there are people who still ask, so does a person who's signing need to have this software as well? Even though that was like one of the first things that I wrote in the demo and the explainer that I sent around. But that's always going to be the case. You're, in that spectrum of non-believers and going up to innovators. You're going to have that kind of spectrum even within an organization, not just there's an organization which is somewhere there. So you still have to push through, and there will be successes and failures, but you also have to see what is the budget, because that's another major factor. You have to prove that this $1,000 a month is actually going to be useful, and it's going to reduce costs somewhere else and time somewhere else, and also at the mindset and the readiness of your organization and the people involved.
Oh, so if we were to summarize what everyone has kind of said, right? What are legal departments doing right, and what you need to do better to get there? I think the overall theme from everything my fellow panelists have said revolves around the mindset. Everyone needs to have the right mindset in order to adopt technology. If you're resistant to it, if you're not ready for it, it's just not going to be successful. And I think we've pretty much established that technology is key when it comes to the legal department of the future. And then we talk about experimentation, failures, learning from failures, and not stopping there. And I think the other theme we talked about also was not being afraid to move on, right? I think those are very important themes for preparing or moving towards the legal department of the future. I can tell you that even in an organization like Accenture, who's very innovative, who's tech forward, they have failure, right? There was a time where legal was forced to move into the space of technology and stop using manual processes. And when I say manual processes, I do mean Microsoft Office. That is manual, right? Coming up with a spreadsheet every time you want to review a contract is manual. It's no longer automated, right? So when you talk about digital journey and they say, yes, I use Microsoft Outlook now. No, that's not digitalization. Right? So, moving away from manual processes, trying to automate processes or have cloud-based computing so that everything is off a template and you have standardized measures and metrics for your legal processes. When you're forced into that kind of a situation, to be honest, you're like a fish out of water. You're struggling to understand tech terms. You're struggling to understand how this would even benefit you and your legal department. One of the key considerations you need to think about, like Frederick very aptly mentioned earlier, was knowing what you're trying to achieve, right? And envisioning what that end state is like. So moving away from every time I want to review a contract, let me pre-fill this Excel scorecard on risk, to, identifying the risk in a software and just on the spot marking it and directing it to the person who needs to review that or approve that. It's a huge step forward, and it creates so much more efficiency because, it takes 3 to 4 hours for you to pre-fill an Excel sheet. And it takes 10 seconds for you to highlight, write a note, and send it off to the person to review. So sometimes it's not so much about reducing the legal function, it's just making you work more optimally. And tech solutions have come a long way from where it started out when it comes to legal operations. So there was this time where, I won't name names, but there was a tech company that came up with a software similar to the whole CRM system for legal. So you can assign legal work through that system, including sending documents across for review, so that it bridges the gap bridges the gap between the business teams and legal. So whenever they want something reviewed, they would send in a request. That request comes through, kind of like your CRM systems, where it moves from stage 1 to stage 2. Then you get a work order. There's an ID. There's the details of the deal, and then your documents and what they need you to do. It's, yeah, it creates for a process that goes through the system, but it was not efficient. One, because it was linked to your Outlook, so that you get an email prompt every time you get a request, it took 35 minutes on minimum for your Outlook to load in the morning, because it's such a huge add-in. And downloading documents, every time a request came in, took at least an hour, because God knows the system works at chicken pace. So tech solutions, if it's not tailored to the purpose you're trying to achieve, that's what you get stuck with. You get stuck with a roadblock, not so much a solution to your problem. So when you look at, deciding on how to move forward as a department, or when you look at your operational processes, your documentation, you look for tech solutions that create efficiencies. If it doesn't create an efficiency, don't bother. It's much better to maintain a manual process that's more efficient than it is to adopt a tech solution that makes you less efficient. And that's where, you learn from there, you decide what to do better, how to do better, and, find a solution that works for you to get you to the end state that you're envisioning. I don't think there's a specific end state for any legal department of the future, because every organization is going to be different, and every organization is at a different stage now, right? From Accenture being a super tech forward company coming to Citi, all banks for the most part are very tech conservative when it comes to corporate functions. You have banks that still require certain departments like legal and AML and sanctions to have fixed desktops, so they can't work from home and they can't remove data from the premises, because banking data is super sensitive. And the kind of information they have access to is also super sensitive. So you want to remove that factor. So when it came to the COVID scenario and everyone had to move to work from home, finding tech solutions to allow everyone now to have remote access to their work systems became a huge challenge for a lot of organizations. And you would be surprised that in the 21st century that you have that, moving from desktop to laptop in an organization was a huge problem. And it is. That was the reality of it. I remember 2 years ago in March, when the first MCO was just on the brink of being announced, every single bank in Malaysia at that time was scrambling to buy laptops, because they had to get people to a position to be able to work from home before the lockdown was announced. And you wouldn't think that that would be a problem in this day and age, but it is. It is very much a problem. So if you think that, having non-believers or early adopters in this day and age is a thing of the past, it really isn't. It depends on the industry you're from. So, yeah. Oh, my bad. Anyway, I think we've all pretty much covered, where we're going. The only other thing we wanted to cover really was the individual, like as a legal individual, what do you do to be a part of the legal department of the future? But, if you're running out of time, we can just cover that over lunch or something. Go ahead, Bharti. Yeah, sure. Oh, there you go. You've got. Can we have 5 minutes just to do some Q&A? Oh, you have to twist the base of the mic. No, yeah, just at the bottom, twist it.
So my question to the panel is a very simple question. academically we have discussed, we have given the future, how the legal department would be of the companies and all. I'm coming from India. Around 1.48 million companies are registered in India. What is the reach of panel like LexTalk World and expert like you? How to share this information and knowledge to all those companies, one. And number two, besides this, 1.4 million lawyers registered over there. They cannot be even left out. We are representing them. So what is the plan? And because legal department of the future cannot be possibly achieve that goal and target until unless we have some plan for them. My question to you.
I can take the first question, and this is more like a tongue-in-cheek. I mean, each and every of you play as ambassador to this message. I mean, you all have been sitting here sharing the experience, including the virtual panelists as well. So what I would just really call is that each and every of you as ambassador to call this message out. So you're right. I mean, to a certain extent, we do need some form of consistency. Every department needs to change. So I think it's a function of spreading the message, and secondly, competition. Right, as I said, you know, as each department compete against each other to be more efficient, to develop new values, you will essentially reach a status of equality. Everybody will chase to be the innovators of the future. So I think that maybe is a short answer to your question.
Yeah, I mean, I could just add to that to say that first, there were 3 GCs here who didn't want to name products that failed them. I'm so glad they did not name LexisNexis as their product. But having said that, there will be companies like us and companies everywhere, providers, who are going to create solutions for all lawyers everywhere, right, all over the world. And I think that it's just going to come. We don't really need to have like a marketing strategy for lawyers to adopt technology. It's going to be a sink or swim situation. Whether the sink or swim happens in Singapore today and happens in India 3 years from now, it's just a matter of time. So I think the situation will just evolve by itself and force lawyers to acknowledge that this is what they need to adopt and take seriously. And I think time will just help everything, to be honest.
I'll just add one last thing. Actually, for India, I don't think you need to worry because a lot of the solutions are actually coming from there. Like the 3 solutions I spoke about, one of them was an Indian company, Indian technology provider, and they are now marketing to all of Southeast Asia. So I think with India, a few generations of evolution have actually been skipped because so much technology work is actually happening in-house there and in various companies there. And the last thing that's going to force everyone to change is the lawyer of the future, which we didn't really get to touch upon. But at least for me, like when I am interviewing now, one of the first things that I ask my future employer is, how do you do technology? What do you offer to your lawyers? How do you work as a company? Which technologies do you use? And that's a huge consideration when I decide to join a company or not. So, and I am, an older millennial. So the younger ones are going to force that even more. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sir, you have a question?
Yeah, I'll just quickly wrap up my question. The question was, initially, I think Gaythri mentioned that when you launched the review product, the accuracy went up to 95%. So the success of the AI depends how much is the data sets that AI is able to learn. Organizations like GSK and bigger organizations will have that many of legacy data available for AI to learn and churn out more accurate data. But there will be businesses who requires the technology solutions, who requires AI-based review solutions, but they may not be having that much of legacy data available. So in those cases, how do you promote your product, or how do you really solve that, because they may not be having that much of data. So do you prefer to have an industry-specific module for them, or how you integrate to those clients? If you could throw some light on that.
The quick answer to your question is get LexisNexis.
That's a good one.
I also represent an AI-based company, so I think we can work together.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's similarly quick, but you don't necessarily need data. You need data if you want to use the history, you want to analyze history, right? If you're talking about future, all you need to do is assess what your end customer or your end user it needs. And then you create the solution for them as well, right? Data is required if you want to use history to predict the future, things like that as well. But not necessarily all the time. Workflow tools don't really require data as well. Chat bots or voice recognition or, those kinds of things, visual recognition, facial recognition, those kinds of things don't require data. So it just depends on what you have. If you have it, of course, maximize it. If you don't have it, then you make do and create solutions that don't require it.
Or you tap into solutions that have that data for you from the market, again, LexisNexis, because they collate that data for you. They have that information, they have the background, they've done the analysis. All you need to do is pay a subscriber's fees and have access to it.
Yeah, use it to get better. Thanks, do you want to work for me?
Disclaimer, I don't work for LexisNexis, but...
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bharti.
All right, Bharti, I'll put you out of your misery.